Everyone's attention is focused on the Russian bear as it marches over Eastern Europe. But is the greater threat to the globe lurking in the East? Is China planning to take over the world? That depends on your definition of is. There is no doubt that China is a tremendous global force. In fact, depending on your standards, it may be merely the world's second superpower after the United States. It has more than 4 times the population of the United States and is the world's most populated country. It boasts the world's second biggest economy, the 3rd largest country in terms of land area after Russia and Canada, and is one of just a few nuclear powers. It is certainly the most powerful country in Asia, and its goals may be far greater. But what are China's true intentions for the world? You can find out by looking near to home. Hong Kong, a British territory for decades, was returned to China in 1997 following discussions that resulted in the one country, two systems plan. Hong Kong would be permitted to retain its autonomy and operate as a democracy, although China would handle some broader matters and it would be legally recognized as a part of the greater country. For a time, it was the system, until China decided it wasn't, and the People's Republic of China has been tightening the screws ever since. And China has gone through a lot of changes. China has been a dictatorship since it became a communist republic under Mao Zedong in 1949. However, Mao's rigorous dedication to communist theory, which resulted in horrible famines and persecution, was gradually supplanted by a totally different system under Deng Xiaoping and current leader Xi Jinping. The country maintained its authoritarian regime while altering its economic policies with a mix of government-controlled capitalism. China's economy has flourished under this structure, and it has become one of the world's leading manufacturers of electronics, appliances, and mined rare earth minerals required for manufacturing. However, China's modernization has not been beneficial in other aspects. While China is no longer a communist country, its security situation is nevertheless extremely similar to that of Mao, albeit with a high-tech twist. Governments in the current day rely extensively on the internet to gather intelligence about potential threats. That is true in China, as it is in most other nations, with big tech businesses providing information to the government when needed. Websites like TikTok in China feature significant surveillance software that the Chinese government utilizes for unknown reasons. Internally, China is well known for its social credit system. Citizens are ranked based on their perceived devotion to the government and their overall behavior, with certain benefits offered solely to individuals with better social credit ratings. And if you're under China's control, there's not much you can do to get out. Hong Kong was promised a certain amount of autonomy for a set period of time, but in recent years, those promises have been substantially violated. While they continue to hold separate elections, Chinese authorities are increasingly interfering in them, disqualifying or arresting candidates who oppose the policies of the People's Republic. This frequently results in mostly uncontested elections, and the latest COVID shutdowns prompted China to get even more engaged, shutting down rallies and public meetings. So, if you're within China, you're undoubtedly being held hostage. But what if you're not in it? That depends on your location because China has been embroiled in a territorial battle along its borders for about 70 years. The People's Republic of China took over in the midst of a devastating civil war. The communists eventually won, but the forces of the Republic of China were able to consolidate and hold the island of Taiwan, effectively creating a new country there. The main issue is that China continues to refuse to acknowledge Taiwan as an independent country. In reality, despite claiming to be Taiwan's legal government, the Taiwanese government, now a democracy, nevertheless claims to be the legitimate government of mainland China. However, the People's Republic of China has far greater influence, and it has used diplomatic pressure to block worldwide recognition of Taiwan as a United Nations member state, and they're not hesitant to go after large targets. When someone acknowledges Taiwan as independent, China considers it a personal affront, even if that person is not the ruler of a nation. That is why, in recent decades, most U.S. politicians have avoided visiting Taiwan in order to avoid provoking any diplomatic issues for the president. However, when Speaker Nancy Pelosi and other members of Congress decided to visit the island nation in 2022, China reacted angrily. They increased military maneuvers surrounding the island, terrifying residents, and one Chinese propagandist even suggested that the government shoot down Pelosi's plane. While that would have certainly begun a heated conflict between China and the U.S., and calmer heads prevailed, it was evident that China was eager to escalate. Is China, however, all talk and no action? Depending on where you look. While they garner a lot of attention for their outlandish online character, with colorful propagandists propagating conspiracy theories and attempting to meme, they really maintain a very powerful barrier against worldwide criticism, one that Russia enjoys as well. China's legal system is famously harsh, with hefty terms and the death penalty available for a wide range of offenses, far more than murder or treason. While the majority of inmates in Chinese jails are Chinese, they frequently arrest people from other nations for the purpose of prisoner swaps. It wasn't long after the CEO of Chinese corporation Huawei was jailed in Canada that a Canadian citizen was arrested in China on drug charges. However, China's influence is expanding rapidly. Nobody knows what China's long-term plans are. The People's Republic has made several statements about invading Taiwan, and they're not sure watching Russia and Ukraine to see how it plays out. But things aren't looking good for Russia. The majority of the world has pledged military and financial assistance to Ukraine, while Russia has been increasingly isolated and sanctioned. While Taiwan is not internationally recognized as an independent country in the same way as Ukraine is, the US has vowed to defend it, so any kind of hot conflict on the island would certainly develop swiftly, potentially with nuclear repercussions. As a result, China may be pursuing a more gradual and global approach. China's online operations extend far beyond an army of internet trolls, and the country may be on its way to becoming the world's foremost cyber hacking outfit. While they aren't sharing specifics about their operations, it is believed that they have 3 divisions of cyber warriors, specialized military forces that train in cyber attacks and work on behalf of the government, state workers who aren't in the military but are tasked with cyber warfare and spying, and a group of non-government workers who are likely hired by the government and have more deniability when they need to break into rival governments' networks. And they've done a lot of harm. China has hacked who? Who have they not hacked? Countless governments have complained that Chinese hackers stole sensitive information. Australia claimed that a 2013 hack gained access to its intelligence headquarters blueprints, while Canada alleged an attack in 2011 that penetrated various federal departments. At least 200 cyber attacks against Japanese enterprises and scientific organizations have been recorded in Japan, while China's frequent opponent India has reported several denial-of-service assaults that may have been carried out by Chinese government operatives. Ukraine claimed assaults in the early days of the war, possibly on behalf of Russia, and even the Vatican reported cyber attacks. For a long time, the United States has been the primary target of Chinese cyber attacks, with allegations of strikes on military, political, commercial, and industrial entities. Even the world's greatest corporations are vulnerable. Google was hacked in 2010 and stated that its consumers' privacy had been violated. They also targeted large corporations, such as defense contractor Northrop Grumman and industrial behemoth Dow Chemical. An attack on Yahoo may have had fewer repercussions for national security, but they most likely had access to all of your mother's emails, including that lengthy conversation with a Nigerian prince. So what exactly does China want with all of that data? If you ask them, they'd answer, "We have no idea what you're talking about." There will be no cyber hacking here, they say as they proceed to hack another organization. And because China refuses to admit to its cyber hacking activities, it's difficult to determine what they're wanting. While they hack private enterprises, they may be practicing Chinese-style capitalism, obtaining trade secrets to transfer to their own companies, allowing them to build lower-cost remakes of big US items, giving them a market advantage. In their hacking of government organizations, they may also be seeking for critical access to diplomatic cables. However, cybersecurity experts are concerned about a much larger threat. If China knows how to break into the mainframes of major corporations and government institutions, they may be looking for a way to shut them down. And if they were to start a war over Taiwan or another country, being able to cripple the US military and civilian infrastructure at precisely the right time could give them the edge they need to finish the job. Is China, though, considering a major move? If so, they've been putting their pieces on the board for quite some time. China's influence in Asia extends far beyond Taiwan and Hong Kong. They assert unilateral sovereignty over the whole South China Sea, putting them at odds with Indonesia, the Philippines, Vietnam, and other countries. According to China's assertion, they have the ability to ban foreign military from gathering intelligence in the water, which has resulted in several near misses between Chinese and Western planes. During a recent disagreement, The Hague decided in favor of the Philippines, prompting China to repeat its allegations and continue its harassing campaign. So why is China so keen on this territory? Some individuals believe it is just maximalism. After all, if you claim the sea that surrounds a number of nations, it's not a difficult leap to claim those countries as well. The ocean, on the other hand, is extremely valuable, with an estimated 11 billion barrels of undiscovered oil and about 200 trillion cubic feet of natural gas hidden far beneath the waves. If China can persuade the rest of the world to recognize their sovereignty over these islands, they will have a significant advantage in energy production, which they need given their vast population and energy demands. This area also offers a number of highly sought-after fishing grounds, which would provide China with the food it requires without relying on imports. More crucially, they would control the food availability of many poorer countries, forcing them to associate with them. And if you can't find a beachhead, why not construct your own? China has been known to take over tiny islands in the South China Sea, but they've recently begun to take a different strategy, constructing artificial islands in the South China Sea that allow them to develop unrivaled military staging grounds. These islands are generally created on rocks or reefs near the water's surface. They are covered with tougher material and made into tiny military bases after being dredged to produce a firmer floor. This effectively puts the disputed maritime region into Chinese territory and serves as a deterrent to any other country that attempts to enter the area. Is China, however, a threat to the region? So far, it appears that China is attempting to win through soft power rather than outright military force. They are by far the most powerful military force in the region, which implies that any other country is likely to back down if directly confronted. While both North Korea and India have nuclear weapons, North Korea usually sides with China, while India is obsessed with its rivalry with Pakistan. China's most contentious relations in the area are with Vietnam, with whom it has historically fought wars. Now the two communist nations are in trouble, with China advancing on Vietnam's coastline in the South China Sea and harassing Vietnamese sailors. China began constructing an oil rig deep into Vietnam's territorial waters in 2014. China appears to be establishing itself as a regional power via pure force of will, but it is pursuing a quite different strategy elsewhere. No continent is more susceptible to realignment than Africa. Historically subject to colonialism, occupation, and a violent slave trade, many of its nations acquired independence only in the 20th century, sometimes at the end of deadly battles. While many of the countries have solid diplomatic connections with Europe and North America, past scars must be healed. That is why China views Africa as a huge prospect for expansion. They're not seeking to bully their way into a place at the table this time. They intend to buy their way in. Chinese investments in Africa have received a great deal of attention in recent years, as the government relocates many of its industrial activities there. Because Africa is remote from China's expansionist operations in the South China Sea, many African countries are neutral toward China. As a result, if a Chinese company turns up hoping to develop a facility there, they are likely to be permitted. And China understands how to sweeten the pot. As part of their investment, they will typically construct new houses or other infrastructure, perhaps generating loyalists down the road should the globe divide between China and the United States. And investing in Africa makes perfect sense for China. Many individuals believe that Africa is the world's future. Not only is the region's population predicted to quadruple in the next 30 years, the greatest rate of growth of any continent, but it also has 7 of the world's 10 fastest growing economies. That might make Africa the best destination in the world for future investments, and China has made it plain that they are not simply reinstating the old dynamic of Africa being used as a plundering ground for international powers. They typically staff their enterprises with African labor, providing jobs to the local economy, although low-skilled and low-paying jobs with Chinese figures holding the upper positions. But is this good or harmful for Africa? Some fear that China is setting Africa up for a debt trap, in which they spend extensively in a nation in exchange for promises of payback, only for the profits to never materialize and the country to be left in limbo. That hasn't occurred yet because China appears to be interested in more than just extracting resources or money from Africa. They also regard it as a diplomatic investment. China intends to manage these nations' technological infrastructure, bringing industry to many of them for the first time. If China goes to war with the United States and NATO, those nations might be shut off from a large infrastructure network that China has controlled. One of the major worries about this initiative is that strong industrialization in African countries is harming the environment. Yet governments in most countries appear to be enthusiastic about the investment. But is there a larger plan at work here? China, like other past and present superpowers, appears to have a hand in almost every region. To gather intelligence, Europe and North America rely mostly on careful diplomacy and an aggressive cyber hacking campaign. They approach their Asian neighbors with belligerence and stretch their muscles to seize land. However, for states in the so-called third world, there is frequently an outstretched hand promising large investments and potentially an alliance against the globe's elder powerhouses. And some believe that everything is aligning for China to make a significant move. Many people believe that the 21st century will be known as the Chinese century, with the country's economy expanding at a breakneck pace. However, their efforts to limit the COVID-19 epidemic have taken a heavy toll, resulting in economic slowdowns. Furthermore, they've lost many diplomatic friends in the West as a result of their harsh military tactics and internal policies, notably their imprisonment of the huge Uyghur Muslim community and treatment of other minority groups, such as Buddhists and the Falun Gong movement. This has hindered their progress, with many Western countries becoming afraid to invest extensively there. People are concerned that they are waiting for a military move. China has an immensely formidable military, maybe the world's second strongest. While Russia has the most nuclear bombs of any country, its arsenal is so old and unstable that no one knows how many of them would even fire. China is reported to have 350 nuclear warheads, a significantly smaller arsenal than the United States, but every single one of them is operational, and many are linked to ballistic missiles capable of striking almost anywhere on the planet. They are also one of the few countries having aircraft carriers, and their naval and aerial fleets are seen to be comparable with the US Navy. Their greatest weapon, though, may be their level of preparation. So if China wanted to take over the globe, how would they go about it? The initial move would most likely be to coordinate with other countries. Since the conflict with Ukraine, China has been one of Russia's few surviving friends, assisting them in avoiding sanctions and giving critical economic assistance. So if China intended to make its own move on Taiwan, or a far larger plot, it would very certainly enlist Russia's assistance. A coordinated attack on many targets may be substantially more difficult to coordinate. They may even have a third partner in North Korea, which is led by the notorious Kim Jong-un. Even after 70 years, North Korea, like China and Taiwan, has never recognized South Korea's independence. A three-pronged onslaught like this might catch everyone off guard. But will they be successful? We've seen how Russia has done in terms of a complete military invasion, and North Korea has never been tested against a military beyond its peninsula. However, China's naval fleet is formidable, and many feel it might bring the US Navy to a halt in the Pacific. And there's always the possibility of escalation when two nuclear nations stand off and shoot at each other. China could not win a nuclear war with the US, but a big nuclear exchange would almost certainly result in neither country being standing. As a result, China is seeking to prevent a nuclear war, and it may have a strategy in place to accomplish so. Could China win a war without firing a single shot? This is where China's cyber hacking infrastructure may come into play. Hackers, unlike other military strikes, do not make their presence known. They infiltrate under the cover of night. Imagine waking up one morning to find that nothing was working. The internet was down, smart gadgets were broken, and even the government's connections were down. They work for hours to get everything up and running, only to learn that Chinese warships are pounding Taiwan. Their military has created beachheads in Vietnam and the Philippines, and North Korea has crossed the demilitarized zone. While the war is far from over, China has pronounced their invasion a success and has announced that any involvement from the US would be considered an invasion of their country. Surely, the US will equip itself, right? Not so quickly. Perhaps China calls in its chips with Africa, cutting the US off from numerous vital sources. Supply chain concerns plagued Russia throughout the Ukraine war, and the US may now confront the same challenge. China and any nation affiliated with it will have shut off their supply. More importantly, an invaded Taiwan would no longer supply America with the essential semiconductors it needs to run most of its equipment, and the US would have to think twice before squandering critical military technology. While South Korea's powerful military would certainly be able to hold off North Korea for a long period, and China would likely reign in the north to prevent them from utilizing nuclear weapons, Taiwan or Southeast Asian states are unlikely to be able to hold out for long without assistance. Is this, however, where China wants to stop? For a long time, China's objective has been to take over most of Asia, and if this strategy worked, it would have done so without being embroiled in a global fight. This would solidify its position as a powerhouse and make the US appear toothless. More countries, including India, will want to ally with China. China's objective, rather than overtly conquering India, would most likely be to make it into a regional client state, and with Pakistan on one side and China on the other, they could put a lot of pressure on the subcontinent. Smaller nations in the vicinity would almost certainly prefer to ally with China for safety, and China's next major move would be to extend further out into the Pacific. Many small island states may be coerced into accepting agreements that give the Chinese complete control in exchange for safety, and this might lead to direct war between China and the United States. While most Pacific islands have become independent states, the United States still maintains certain territories, notably Guam and American Samoa. While they are unlikely to try to annex any of them directly, at least at this point, they will most certainly begin to treat them in a manner similar to how they first treated Vietnam. They just trample on their sovereignty as much as they wanted, daring them to retaliate. Will the United States put up with this? That depends on the political context at the moment. How eager is the U.S. to engage in combat with a rival superpower? Is the public in favor of safeguarding these islands, or do they prefer to abandon them to their fate? If they are abandoned, it will be another damage to the United States' international reputation. And the next on the chopping block will be Hawaii, a genuine state, but thousands of miles from the mainland. Could China make advances there with a robust independence movement? As a result, China's objective may not be to conquer the globe through a shock and awe military assault against the world's most powerful militaries. It might just be intending to gradually increase its strength and influence until it is the world's most powerful superpower. That's all for now, folks. If you learned something, please make sure that you click the like button in order to make YouTube happy and for more insightful business and political case studies. Please subscribe to our channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.